Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Coffee with Craig. I am your host, Craig DeLuz. We really appreciate you guys tuning in and joining the conversation as we talk about the Second Amendment. We talk about firearms policy. We talk about all things gun and gun related, trying to bring to them what I like to call a little bit of uncommon sense. Because as we all know, common sense is not that common. It's more like common nonsense. But all that aside, I want to thank you guys for tuning in. Had a couple of things that I wanted to update you guys on before we get into the conversation today. The first thing is going to be, as you know, Sacramento Black Rifle and Sparks Black Rifle are now sponsors of Coffee with Craig. Thank you so much, guys. Very much appreciate you guys chipping in and helping us get the word out. So as a thank you, we're going to be out at Sacramento Black Rifle on Friday. That's tomorrow. And we're going to be there. I'm going to be there. Richard's going to be there. Those of you who are on our email list, you know who Richard is. He's our grassroots advocate. He's our liaison to you folks through our email and through our social media. So come on out, meet me, meet Richard, come out, say hello, meet some of the guys who are working behind the scenes in order to help fight for our rights. And you can come out, say a thank you to them. But they can also, and we can also say a thank you to you for your support of all that we do. So the details will be on our Facebook page. So check out Facebook. If you're not on Facebook, get on Facebook. And while you're there, remember to like our Facebook page. And those of you, by the way, who are watching this on Facebook, please go subscribe to our YouTube channel. Help us get the word out. We're now over 10,000. We're over 10,000 subscribers, but we need to get more because we need to get, once again, the more subscribers we have, the easier it is for us to help get the word out because we're reaching more people. So help us by subscribing. So that's one event. That's going to be taking place on Friday, tomorrow. Now, Saturday, there's another event that's going to be taking place. Now, FBC is not a sponsor of this event. We're not putting on this event, and I may or may not be there. Hey, things are keeping me busy, so I can't say whether or not for sure I'm going to be able to be there, but I want you guys to know about it so that you guys can be there. And this is going to be the National State Capitol Stand for Your Rights 2A rally. It's going to be taking place at state capitals throughout the country. It will be taking place here in there will be one taking place in Sacramento, California, as well as various other states. If you want to know if it's taking place in your state, simply go to Facebook. Type in the little search thing, NCCPA. You'll see the page come up, or you'll see various different states come up. Click on it, and those will have the details as to what is going on in your particular state. Once again, I cannot say for sure whether or not I'm going to be there, but I do want you guys to know so that you guys can be there and stand up for our right to keep and bear arms. So please make sure, check it out, and get there if you can, in fact, get there. Weather's supposed to be rather nice on Saturday, so it'll be a good chance to get out, bring the family, and have them get involved in the fight for our civil rights. Now, let's get into today's topic, shall we? So, yesterday I was talking with you guys about fake news. And I was sharing with you all of the instances, or a number of different instances of fake news. And we all know that CNN, MSNBC, the major news networks, we all know that they have an agenda when it comes to the Second Amendment. And that agenda is about banning guns. They don't want people to be able to exercise their right to keep and bear arms. They just don't want us to. And the problem with having an agenda when it comes to news reporting is that you tend to ignore any information or data points, or at least downplay any of that information that might work contrary to whatever it is that your stated agenda is. I, for one, whenever I do things in the media, I never expect our perspective to be fairly portrayed, meaning I'm not going to get equal time, but I do expect it to be accurately portrayed. But now with that, what oftentimes happens in many of these stories is that they downplay our particular perspective. For example, in the instance that I wanted to talk with you guys about, but I kind of ran out of time, because as I've said before, I just ran out of time. So I want to talk to you about it today. But the one that I wanted to talk with you about had to do with the big rally that took place not long after the Parkland shooting that was put on by Town Hall. This was a CNN Town Hall in Sunrise, Florida, where the students of Parkland got together and they brought together their elected officials and they told them what was on their mind. They spoke in their own words about how important it was to end gun violence by promoting gun control.
Last night, CNN held a town hall in an arena in Sunrise, Florida, where students, teachers, parents, and many others who were affected by the Parkland shooting stood up and questioned their lawmakers on gun control, school safety, and mental health. The conversation was obviously intense and emotional, but really amazing to watch. Even though the students were mostly at the center of the discussion, parents also got involved, like Fred Gutenberg, who lost his daughter Jamie in the shooting last week. He told Senator Marco Rubio, quote, "Your comments this week and those of our president have been pathetically weak." But the story of last night is really about the students who were there, the students who lost friends, and the students who are now standing up to demand change. One of those students is Emma Gonzalez, who you might recognize from the viral speech she gave days ago. Emma questioned the NRA representative that was there, asking if it should be harder to obtain semi-automatic weapons or modifications. When the representative seemed to avoid the question, Broward County Sheriff Scott Israel confronted her, saying, "You just told this group of people you're standing up for them. You're not standing up for them until you say, I want less weapons." Another student, Cameron Kowski, who's also the founder of March for Our Lives, questioned Senator Rubio directly, asking if he would refuse to accept further donations from the NRA. Check it out.
Can you tell me right now that you will not accept a single donation from the NRA in the future?
And what's important to know is that it is important that these questions are being asked, especially by these young people. And you can tell that the energy in that room was in support of these students who are standing up for what they truly believe in. And on top of that room being in support, now some of our favorite celebrities have also taken notice of this powerful town hall. Our 44th president, Barack Obama, tweeted in support by saying, "Young people have all helped lead our great movements." How inspiring to see it again in so many smart, fearless students standing up for their right to be safe, marching and organizing to remake the world as it should be. We've been waiting for you, and we've got your backs.
It's important to note how important it was that these students were the ones asking the questions, speaking and voicing their own opinions. Or were they?
At the request of a CNN producer, you sent in a number of questions, statements you wanted to make, questions that you wanted to ask of the politicians on the stage, and they rewrote one of your questions? Is that right?
Yes, sir. So what had happened was 4 days ago, I had gotten contacted by a lady named Carrie Stevenson from CNN. She had asked me originally to just write a speech. It was going to be at the town hall at the BB&T Center, so I agreed. I felt like it would be the right thing to do, be able to go speak my part, as well as open eyes to a few things that I thought that could make this situation a little better. From there, 3 days ago, so the next day after that, we had gotten, I got an email back from her, and she asked for more of questions rather than a speech, which I was totally fine with. So I wrote a little less of a speech and more of questions that I wanted to ask at the town hall. The day after that, it was more of just questions. She asked for just questions that I would like to ask. So I gave her my questions, and then yesterday at about 5:15, I made contact with her, and she had asked if I just asked her one question. So what they had actually done was wrote out a question for me, because in my interview with CNN, I had talked about arming the teachers if they were willing to arm themselves in the school to carry on campus. And they had, she had taken that of what I had briefed on and actually wrote that question out for me. So I have that question here if you'd like me to ask it for you.
Well, but I just want to make sure I have this straight. So you sent them a long, in effect, essay on what you thought, but they put
Yes,
their
sir.
own words in the question, and they weren't the same as the words you had sent in? They were the producer's words?
Absolutely. They had taken what I had wrote and what I had briefed on and talked about, and they actually wrote the question for me.
But not with your words. I mean, they put their own words into your question, even after they'd asked you to send questions in. But that seems dishonest.
So, to be clear, they originally asked him to give a speech. He gave them what he would say. Then they said, "Nah, why don't you give us some questions? Questions would be better." They sent him the questions. They said, nah, tell you what, why don't you send us one question? So he sent them one question. And then they said, nah, tell you what, why don't you ask this question? That sounds kind of fishy. I mean, they couldn't really do that, could they? I mean, after all, he is the only person that's out there saying that this happened, right? No, he's not.
Reaction to that the CNN denies this, by the way, but they have a history of planting questions that Michelle Malkin and others have written about before in other events. But Colton Hobb, who gave that interview, was emphatic about his point.
Yes. Well, I think the whole point of the town hall meeting was to hear the kids and hear what we had to say. And for that to happen is inexcusable. Our voices need to be heard, and he should have been able to ask any question he had to ask. But instead, we have these networks that don't want us to give our real opinions, and they want us to further their own agendas.
Andrew, it seemed like
Laura,
most of the students, Andrew, had the same opinion on what to do, namely to ban certain weapons, to trash the NRA, to be really disrespectful to Marco Rubio, and nasty things being said to Dana Lash, who was there. But they all seemed to be pretty much in agreement, as far as I could tell. There was no diversity of opinion among either the students or anyone else that I saw, even in the audience.
And Laura, that's not surprising at all. I actually spoke to a CNN producer on Thursday, the day after the shooting, and the producer insinuated to me they were looking for people who were willing to espouse a certain narrative, which was taking the tragedy and turning it into a policy debate, and I read that as being a gun control debate.
And that, my friends, is exactly what the point was to turn it into a gun control debate. And then they wonder why we call it fake news. So here it is. They organized a town hall. They decide what questions are going to be asked. They decide how the conversation is going to go. They probably controlled the makeup of the audience. And then they invite the people who are going to come and speak. Now, interestingly enough, one of the people that they invited to come speak was Mr. Scott Israel, the sheriff in Broward County. Now, what I found odd was that, keep in mind, this was the same sheriff who didn't do his job. If he had done his job, then this individual, the individual who perpetrated the Parkland shooting, likely would not have ever had a gun. And the representative from the NRA, and you all know who she is because, y'all are involved. Clearly the individual who hosts Awesomeness TV doesn't know who Dana Lash is. But I found it interesting that they have the two of them together, and then the sheriff decides he's going to say, well, no, if you are with them, then you'll say you want less weapons. Well, if there had been a diversity of opinions there, if there had really been an open town hall discussion, then perhaps someone would have asked why the sheriff didn't do his job. Perhaps someone would have asked about the massive failure of government, say of the FBI, who had been contacted numerous times about this individual. Both local law enforcement, the sheriff, and the FBI had been contacted about this individual. There were representatives there at the school, including a resource officer there at the school, who thought that this kid needed to be committed. But they did nothing. But we're not going to talk about that. We're not going to talk about the fact that this was a gun-free school zone. And one of the students who just wanted to talk about, well, why wouldn't we arm teachers who want to have a concealed carry permit, who want to be able to defend themselves and their students, who want to be able to be trained to be able to do so? Why wasn't that able to be part of the discussion? Clearly there was someone who had been contacted by them, who had been invited by them to be a part of the discussion, who they decided they didn't want to have part of the discussion because what he had to say and his questions didn't fit the narrative. So they didn't have him part of the conversation. CNN, if you want us to believe that you are not fake news, then stop perpetuating fake news. Stop putting it out there. And maybe then we'll stop thinking of you as fake news. And yes, we know that these students, even before this, we knew that these students were being put up to what they were saying by y'all. When I say y'all, I'm not just talking about the mainstream media. I'm talking about the liberal, left-wing, gun-grabbing community who seeks to subvert our rights, like the former president of the United States, who in his tweet talked about how young people are standing up. We're glad that you're there, making the world the way that it should be. Because now these youngsters are acting like mindless bots who now get their 15 minutes of fame because they're willing to stick to the script. Maybe, just maybe, if they were really interested in a real conversation, they might have learned something. Instead of spending their time espousing talking points and reading already pre-prepared questions, and disrespecting people who were there to have an open and honest discussion, maybe they would have learned something. But as long as they're working with the mainstream media, they're going to be nothing more than fake news. And that, my friends, is kind of sad. Anyway, that's going to be it for today's Coffee with Craig. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for liking and sharing our Facebook page and our YouTube channel and subscribing, telling everyone that you know about the Firearms Policy Coalition. We are the home in the fight for civil rights. Got to use them or you're going to lose them. You guys take care.
If you like our videos, follow, subscribe, like, and share.